Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. Last week we began our exploration of the tourism industry, greatly aided by the very informed contribution from the Minister of Environment, Wildlife and Tourism, Thekedi Khama. We were disturbed by forecasts from the World Tourism Council that predicted that even by the year 2024, Botswana's tourism sector would still be contributing less than 4% to GDP. Figures we have seen for the past decade. Why is it, having long since been identified as a possible engine of growth, and after a significant amount of investment has been put into the growth of the industry, are we still not seeing tourism become our next diamond? Our guest went into great detail on the elements hampering the growth of the tourism sector in the first of this two-part discussion last week.
I can't say to you with confidence you will get your flight, because I don't know if Air Botswana will be able to, to fulfill that portion. I can't say to you as an investor, you come and invest, because I don't know if labor will give you a permit or immigration will give you a visa. I don't know, and these are things which are out of my control.
Tonight we continue with this most interesting exchange, delving straight into what Minister Khama proposes as solutions to the challenges he has identified. Welcome back to the show as the Minister of Environment, Wildlife and Tourism shares his vision for the industry. Having outlined the development of tourism in the country, we now ask him what quick wins he sees to address the issue of unreliable services that he raised earlier.
You know what is amazing? It's not that these challenges are unsurmountable. It's not. It's people. It's the person to make a decision. The resource I have, and I'll give you an example, Air Botswana. It's under-resourced. It is, okay. We need to make a conscious decision that there's very few African airlines we know that make money. They're all generally loss-making, okay. So we have to say, do we have an Air Botswana which is going to be loss-making or break-even? What do we talk about the pride of Botswana in having a national airline? But let's not have a national airline which doesn't make us proud. Okay, even if it's going to cost us, let's be proud, because the airline is not just the airline, it's the image that it portrays about the country. So if we don't necessarily fund the airline, we are damaging our own image of the country. Okay, so that's one on Air Botswana, and you've heard me speak about Air Botswana before. The second one, terminal buildings. Terminal buildings, Kasane, Maun, no. How can I have the entry to a 1,000 heritage site and you arrive at Maun Airport, or for that matter, Kasane? At least Gaborone Sasesikam Airport is now, something is happening. But it's a long time coming. So this is when I talk about brand Botswana. What message are we sending out there? Why are we not making a conscious decision to focus on this? And this is where I need support so that I can continue to deliver to the country as the country expects me to deliver. So those are the challenges. The other, of course, is GSM. Terrible. The GSM services in this country, when you consider the rates we pay, I mean, you can drive around Gaborone and get signal and lose signal and get signal and lose signal, It's unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. So, we're in a comfort zone. And this is where I say dare to be different. We're in a comfort zone. We know that Simaman is going to pay their normal subscription to their GSM, and the GSM providers just sit back and say, they will pay. They will pay. But are we delivering a service that we could? No, we're not. It's so unfortunate that the level of standards don't support the assets that we have. And we have amazing assets in this country.
So solutions though, other than the will and pride to turn things around, maybe even long term?
Do you know I like people like you? Because you give me a platform to say this. Okay. And the media can be so helpful in this regard. And where I feel that I need assistance, because I've spoken about it. Even in my Committee of Supply Parliament speech, it's not your normal speech which is coming up. It's going to tell about the budget we've got and the challenges we have. Okay, so that Botswana are informed on what we're trying to do, you know. So the challenge is, yes, how do we go about it? You know, we keep talking and we'll never give up, we'll keep going. And at the end of the day, we just hope that eventually people will realize that what is being said is something that needs to be addressed. Let me give you an example. Let's take Zimbabwe, for example. A country that has lost its own currency. A country where, hey, but today, you have airlines that fly from Johannesburg and other parts of the world, probably taking in about 300 to 400 passenger seats per day, per day, okay, to Victoria Falls per day. We have in Kasane between 750 and 800 beds. Air Botswana flies a 42-seater or a 72-seater on a good day to Kasane 3 times a week. Work it out. The equation will tell you that the number of beds we have versus their accessibility through air, there's a huge mismatch. So where do those beds get filled from? Zimbabwe, Zambia, Johannesburg. How do you travel from Zimbabwe to Kasane? You drive, UTC. How do you fly from Johannesburg to Kasane? Most times SA Airlink. Air Botswana at some stage used to fly, I don't know if they still do. How do you fly from Johannesburg to Maun? The numbers show today that SA Airlink carries more passengers than Air Botswana does on that same route. So it's up to us to open our country. We can't expect somebody else to do it.
There's an ongoing clash of interests between local livelihoods and tourist interests. It's an ongoing one. And the most recent being, of course, the suspension of licenses at Lake Ngami, where fishermen, of course, want to continue to fish, but tourism principles will encourage for the lake to be restored and be taken care of. How do you navigate these type of tensions?
We have the best model probably that exists in the world, which is our CBNRM model, which is a community-based natural resource management model. So what this means is that the community derive a livelihood from the wildlife or the tourism or the natural resource, as it says, natural resource. And we have a significant number of them in the Okavango, probably about 97. The majority of them are in that area. So a concessionaire comes in and he pays a levy for the use of the land, and then he pays another levy to government, okay? And then he pays a bed levy. And let me tell you, they can afford it. When they receive this 2 to 3 to 4 million pula a year, those communities can then develop their own villages, etc., etc., etc. Build classrooms, build environmental toilets, whatever it is. It gives them extra money. Lake Ngami is no exception. I'm going to be the first person to admit that we probably handled Lake Ngami, we should have handled it differently. I have been saying to my staff, this needs to be managed. And I'm not going to say that because I said it and we didn't do it, I'm exonerated of blame. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll take that blame. But at the end of the day, the trust, the Lake Ngami Trust, have been coming to us, asking us for them to be able to build a lodge there. So the community around Lake Ngami will fall into a concession, which they do as everybody else does, and the same rules apply. So, which means sustainable fishing, sustainable use of the resource, and to also capitalize on the resource. So that would be a lodge which would create jobs, and then we would also have crafts there which will also create jobs and an opportunity, okay? So what we're going to have to do is, for the time, because there's been so much fishing out of Lake Ngami, it has to repopulate itself now. And we've also put the ban on Lake Dau as well, because there was a similar pattern starting to appear. Not only that, the environmental damage to the area is just totally beyond belief. And this is why I say, as people, we are sometimes our own worst enemies, because we become negligent because to achieve what it is that we want to achieve, and we don't look at our environment. The environment is very important. You know, the most intelligent animal on the world is the human. And our deteriorating environment is because of humans. So we need to manage ourselves, okay? And the one thing about Lake Ngami is that we will put this freeze for a year. And I'm sure by that time we'll have given the trust an opportunity to set up what it needs to. And then the face of Lake Ngami itself will change and be sustainable, because the moment the weather patterns start to change, currently the Okavango Delta is flowing to the right. And you know, the Okavango Delta is highly impacted on by termites, okay? And antilles and things like that. When the season changes, the cycle changes and it flows to the left, some of the typical rivers to the right don't flow. And those are the rivers that feed Lake Ngami, that go through places like Toteng, okay? So when Lake Ngami, if it were to dry up, which it has done before, and we fish it out, okay, what do we have left? You see? So what we need to be able to do is to say, to relate what is happening in the Okavango to the result of Lake Ngami, so that we make sure that we are sustainable. And this is where this word sustainable comes in, so that we see the impact of what's happening further up and the result of what's going to happen further south. Yeah. So it's one of those ecosystems which we have to manage, and we have to look at it very carefully to make sure that whatever we do in Lake Ngami, and obviously going on Lake Dao, etc., because the Botete River flows that way, is sustainable, and that the communities from those areas benefit. So that is exactly the balance that we have to come through with.
Welcome back to the show as we continue to delve into the many facets that affect the development of tourism in the country. Tensions between tourism interests and those of the ordinary Motswana are also evident in a phenomenon called human-wildlife conflict. What has the ministry devised in this instance?
It's a very topical subject this at the moment, and we're trying our best to manage it best as we can. But let me just run through it for you very quickly. You know, we have about between 140 and 200,000 elephants in the country, of a resident population of about 140. And then we have a migratory population which makes up the balance. And this is because of the poaching and hunting that we've had on our borders, namely Angola, what used to be Caprivi Strip, Zimbabwe and Zambia. So these elephants have moved into Botswana, and as a result, they have started to reproduce at quite a steady rate of about 5% per annum. When you have this sort of increase in population, they start to get crowded and they start to move out. And this is where the human-wildlife conflict is coming about. There are very simple methods that we can use to protect fields, and one is we use is chili powder when we put it on fence poles and mapakwa and things like that. Okay. And the elephants don't like the scent of the chili, so they tend to stay away. But then, of course, the naledi tolo, which is a big issue because those jump very high fences. Okay. But you know, kudu are not compensated for because we believe you can actually do something to keep them out. Typically, they will invade at night, but we can't be everywhere. So that's when we ask for assistance from the farmers. You know, either you put a dog in the field, or you have people who are, you know, patrolling the field. Yes, it's not convenient, and you know, it's difficult. I do understand. But I want to say something to you. This is the first time in 6 or 7 years that DWNP has been given an extra 100 posts. And that is significant because we have been so understaffed for so long that whenever there's a wildlife challenge, whenever there's an anti-poaching challenge, whenever there's a conflict challenge between problem animal control, as we call it, it comes from the same pool of people which does not exceed 200 on the country. So, you know, we have really been challenged on this. So we continue to educate. We have a World Bank program which is operating up in near the Kumaga area and so on. And that also talks to how we protect fields. Okay. So what we're continuously doing is educating farmers that this is what can be done to protect what you have. The cost of compensation is also a challenge. In the last year, we had asked for 7 million. We got 4.5 because of the budgets, okay? But we found savings, so we're now able to pay what we had not paid last year. So we're now doing catch up. And of course, people want to be paid in a timeless fashion. So that is something else that we're trying to do. It helps the pain a little bit, just a little bit, not totally, just a little bit. And I do understand, okay? So the human-wildlife conflict, again, you know, it's something that we have to imagine every day a different way of doing things, because we never know typically what the movement of animals are going to be. Do we create corridors? Some people have suggested creating corridors. If you create a corridor, you create an intense operation in that area, and then you damage the environment. So what we've seen at the moment is to just let that sort of free roaming happen, so that the migratory patterns of elephants and wildlife continue as it is. And then we try and manage the end result of it. It's not ideal, but with the resources we have and with the numbers of staff that we have, we find that that's the best way to mitigate against this challenge.
There has been consistent grumbling that some of our most prized locations and tourist attractions are exorbitantly priced and therefore not accessible to the average Motswana. What does our guest have to say to that?
It's something that I've been working on probably in the last year. We have identified 5 sites in the Okavango, which are also in, I would say, equally prime locations. And we are currently looking at a model where BTO could be involved in it. The ownership will be within the country of these sites, okay? But these sites are sites with a difference. First of all, we don't have our normal 12 bed camps. We'll be going to slightly bigger numbers. We'll be locating them strategically where we have settlements, so that we can bring tourism into our culture, or bring our culture into our tourism, so that people can see hore Batswana ba tshela jang. Ngwao ya Batswana ke ga teng re tle tlhalogane hore ga teng ha re bua ka ngwao ya Botswana, okay? Because when foreigners arrive in Maun, they land, they go to the camp, they go. They don't know Botswana until the ones they meet at the camp. So we have identified 3 locations where we can actually expose communities to tourism. But the beautiful part of it is that it will be affordable to Botswana. And that, I'm telling you, is going to happen. And we've gone a certain way in locating, as I said, the sites, the model of the facility, and what you'll be able to do there. 2 of them are accessible by road from Maun.
Aren't these high prices and the exclusivity of some of these areas that are unobtainable to Botswana part of their charm and attraction to sometimes A-list actors and wealthy foreign nationals that want to visit that part of Botswana?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think you need to remember that where we shop is, you know, when you come to Botswana and you say, for example, if you go to one of our hotels in the north and they charge you 1,200 pula for a room, okay? It's 1,200 pula, okay? So when you're going to the Okavango Delta and you're an American and you're being charged $1,500, because they earn dollars, it's not a big deal, if you see what I'm saying. Exchange rates come into play, then it's a huge discrepancy on what the pula's value is and what the dollar value is, okay? So yes, that is what it is. But I think with Botswana, we've done better than selling the country on famous people's names. We've sold the beauty of the country and not somebody, you know, because that person will move on and they'll be somewhere else, okay? And somebody else will say, hey, you know, then you start competing. Exactly, okay? But here we are selling the beauty of the country. And to keep it pristine, you do charge, because to keep it pristine, we insist on a standard, we grade the lodges, and we want to deliver a deliverable on their environmental impact as well.
When we return, we address the apparent 90% loss in domestic tourism revenue to foreign countries. Welcome back to the show as we discuss the issues affecting the development of tourism in Botswana with the Minister of Environment, Wildlife and Tourism, Tekedi Khama. There is major concern that a lot of the revenue generated by tourism never even makes it into our own coffers, and that the majority of our prime attractions are not owned by locals. According to statistics published in a local newspaper article, reportedly from Botswana Tourism, only 10% of domestic tourism revenue is retained locally, while a shocking 90% is claimed by foreign countries.
I'm going to answer your question by giving you a scenario. Ownership, I agree, whether we talk about total ownership or partial ownership, I think is something we need to agree on, okay? Where something is owned totally out of the country, I have an issue with that, okay? Because we also have something called FDI, foreign direct investment. And when we talk about FDI, we don't necessarily talk about ownership, local participation, we talk about FDI as it is. So we must be very careful that we don't contradict what we're trying to say or what we're trying to do. That is why these next campsites in the Okavango, you are going to see citizen local participation. If we use management from a company that is proficient, it's fine. But then let the resource and the rewards stay in the country. We have leakage. Tourism, there's leakage. Wildlife farming, there's leakage. Construction companies, there's leakage, okay? Because we have this liberal foreign exchange thing, okay? But it's attracted people to Botswana. But let me tell you, that's one part of it. Now, this is how I see the other part of it. If you are allowed to take out X amount because our laws allow it, you've got to replenish in some form or manner what you've taken out. Now, you can either replenish that in cash, in assets, or by employing people. Employing people is a good option. My issue is the following. I want to employ more Botswana in the tourism industry. I want permits. I want people to be able to get their permits within 45 days maximum. I cannot achieve that. I want foreigners to come in so that they can employ Botswana and even partner with those foreigners. I want foreigners, when they come in, to have a reasonable internet service. I cannot guarantee that, okay? Do you know we have camps in the Okavango that have got faster internet service than Gaborone? I've seen it, because that is the level of service they want to provide their clients. So from there, straight away, you'll see the discrepancy between what we are doing in the Okavango and what is happening in the urban areas. Okay. So we need to look at saying, how do we, and I want to take the word you said, how do we brand Botswana? Is the perception, how about how permit? That's the perception. That is the perception which really erodes our brand. You see, this is one thing. So we need to be very careful about the messages we're sending out.
I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say I cannot wait for these proposed initiatives to take shape and for the industry to grow. Until next week and another issue of interest, I'm Nametso Samakula, the team behind First Issues, and our sponsors, First National Bank, wish you a good night and pleasant viewing.